Owen Baya, you may proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to second the special motion for the removal from office by impeachment for the courage and valor in tabling and moving this motion. Honorable Speaker, in his address yesterday, the Deputy President called Parliament and this National Assembly a theater of the absurd, a house of ridicule, a house which processes trash. That's what he said about this Parliament. Honorable Speaker, just like the Deputy President, I'm a student of literature, having been taught by the late 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕 and the late Professor Imbuga. In the definition, Honorable Speaker, of the theater of absurd, a theater of absurd is without plot, is directionless, is laced with stupidity, lacks thoughts, lacks coherence of ideas. It is irrational and logical. If you have read the book by Samuel Beckett, you will know that in that book called Waiting for Godot, that he actually said this Parliament is as good as that literature. Honorable Speaker, I sit in this Parliament and many of you do that. Members, are we a theater of absurd? No. Members, are we directionless? No. Members, are we stupid? No. That's what the Deputy President characterized this Parliament, that we are stupid, we are directionless, and we are people who are very useless to this country. Honorable Speaker, a person of the stature of a Deputy President who can say such things about this chamber does not deserve to continue to become the Deputy President of the Republic. Honorable Speaker, what is the theater of absurd, Honorable Speaker, is when the Deputy President demands that for the 8 million votes, from Mount Kenya, he should be paid 2,000 shillings, translating to 16 billion shillings, so that he can bring peace to this country. Honorable Speaker, that is the theater of absurd. That is the theater of absurd, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the Honorable 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕𝒔 has committed impeachable offences as provided in Article 150, 1 and 2. He has grossly violated the Constitution and has committed crimes under national and international law, as has been ably demonstrated by the mover of the motion. Honorable Speaker, looking at the evidence provided by the mover of the motion, Honorable Speaker, that is enough to impeach the Deputy President, and he must stand impeached by the end of the day today. Honorable Speaker, Article 131E of the Constitution says the President is a symbol of national unity. Read together with Article 147(1), that the Deputy President is the principal assistant of the President and shall deputize the President in the execution of the functions of the Presidency. Honorable Speaker, for this to happen, there must be harmony at the top, in spite of how they were elected to office. His shareholding utterances, and we saw the utterances on the TV here, as demonstrated by the mover, on the shareholding. This ensures that there is no harmony at the Presidency. But what the Deputy President wants to do is to balkanize this country. Balkanize the country where, like in George Orwell's Animal Farm, there are other people who are more equal than others. And as a Parliament, we must refuse to buy into the theory of the Deputy President, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President has taken himself and wants to be a tribal king of the Murima, ready to break the country, sow seeds of disunity for his own political gain. And this chamber, today, by the end of the day, we must have no Deputy President who wants to balkanize this country. Honorable Speaker, The office of the Deputy President is a high office, as established under Article 130. The authority of his office must be exercised within the provisions of Article 10(2), which anchors the principle of national unity as core. The holder of this office must exercise this article at the highest level ever. Honorable Speaker, as Deputy President, he must be beyond reproach. Like Caesar's wife, Honorable Speaker, like Caesar's wife, he must be above any form of suspicion, beyond reproach. But Honorable Speaker, the utterances and the actions of the Deputy President brings his reputation to disrepute, because he has sown sort of disunity and he has taken a trajectory that is likely to bring balkanization of this country. For that, Honorable Speaker, we cannot continue to have a Deputy President who cannot uphold the oath of his office, and therefore 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕 must go. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the story of Pompey, the wife of Julius Caesar, you realize that although she had been accused of sacrilege, but the court acquitted her. But Julius Caesar actually divorced Pompey, not because of what she had been accused of, but because there was suspicion that he could have done something like that. And on that, only on that, Honorable Speaker, as a chamber, as a parliament, we have the authority and right to say this guy has brought himself to disrepute, he has gone below, and he has portrayed himself as a man who cannot be trusted with the position of a Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, and therefore 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕 must go. Honorable Speaker, Article 131(2) C and D gives the impeached because for him the vocabulary of diversity and unity does not exist in his vocabulary. On that premise, Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President, 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕𝒔, must go by end of today. Honorable Speaker, Article 4, 5, and 6 of the Constitution, read together with the third paragraph of the Constitution of Kenya, reinforces the fact that Kenya is one united, indivisible state. In the same breath, Honorable Speaker, the Constitution establishes the structures of counties as units of sharing resources. However, the Deputy President has established an unlawful and constitutional structure of the country as a structure of sharing national resources, where we have now a new structure of shareholders and non-shareholders. Honorable Speaker, that is sacrilege. We cannot establish another structure of resource allocation apart from the one provided in the Constitution. But now we have a new structure where those who are shareholders in the country get more resources and those that are not shareholders don't get resources. For that new structure that he's trying to establish in this country, the Deputy President, 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕 must go. Honorable Speaker, there was a time in this country, Honorable Speaker, if you allow me to say this, and I will ask you to add me a few minutes more to say this, that there was a time in this country when the Deputy Chief Justice, the Honorable Nancy Baraza, was bundled out of office because of impropriety, because of an issue that Kenyans thought was not proper. Nancy Baraza, just pinching the nose of someone. And she was bundled out of office, the high office of the Deputy Chief Justice of this country. That's what happened, Honorable Speaker. Just pinching a nose. And she was bundled out of office. But here we have a Deputy President who has committed sacrilege, trying to balkanize this country. A Deputy President who has called people names. A Deputy President who has called a member of Parliament a prostitute. A Deputy President who has amassed wealth that cannot be accounted for. For that, Honorable Speaker, just like Nancy Baraza was bundled out of office, the Deputy President must also be bundled out of office because of that impropriety. Honorable Speaker, we saw the mover has ably demonstrated to us how he took on a judge. But, Honorable Speaker, it is not just a judge, it is a female judge, Honorable Speaker. Probably he attacked this judge because she was a woman.
A lady judge.
A lady judge. Where is the place of women judges or women in this country? If we have a deputy president who has no respect for other female or lady leaders in this country. Honorable Speaker, for the abuse on a woman judge, a lady judge, the deputy president must go. Honorable Speaker, I know my time is running out, but I want to say this in closing. Honorable Speaker, I want to say this. When you ever face an impeachment motion, Honorable Speaker, you'd rather have a rich dead brother who you can shield yourself with. We saw what the deputy president tried to do yesterday. But I want to tell him that Kenyans are clever and they read through what he wanted to do yesterday. And they will not buy it. It does not sell. It won't be bought. We know who he is. We know.
Give him 1 minute. Finish up. Finish up.
He's my friend. Yes, Honorable Speaker. We know what he tried to do yesterday, but we can't buy it, Honorable Speaker, and therefore Rigathi Gachagua must stand impeached at the end of the day. Honorable Speaker, we are in this boat together. We have one character in this boat called Kenya who is trying to rock it from within. He's trying to break this country. In that event, Honorable Speaker, we have a duty, if we're in that boat, to remove this one person from this boat and toss him into the high seas so that everybody is safe. And that is the duty that we must do today. And I want to convince even those that still have doubts of whether this guy should continue. I want to convince them we are safer as Kenya without Rigathi Gachagua as deputy president of this country. We are safer as a country. The northeastern region is safer. The coast is safer. The Nyanza is safer. And all parts of Kenya are safer, Honorable Speaker. And Kenya is safer without Rigathi Gachagua as deputy president. Mr. Speaker, we do not want Rigathi Gachagua to resign. We want this house, which he has called the House Theatre of Absurd, Honorable Speaker, to impeach him so that he knows that he needs to respect institutions also. Lack of respect of institutions, Honorable Speaker, is sacrilegious for the person of the stature of a deputy president. For that, Honorable Speaker, for not respecting this parliament
kwenye taarifa nyingine ambapo
must impeach one Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua tonight, and we send him home so that he knows his place in this country. For those many remarks, I second, Honorable Speaker, and ask other members to support this question. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order, honorable members on their feet, take your seats. Members on their feet, take your seats. Order, members on their feet. Ruth Odinga, take your seat. Order, honorable members, take your seats. Honorable members, I now propose the question, and you'll note that on the order paper, there is the long version of the motion and the abridged version of the motion. So those of you who want to look for details of the longer version, it is there. I now propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of Article 145 and 151B and 2 of the Constitution and Standing Order 64 and 65, this House resolves to remove from office by impeachment His Excellency Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the following grounds. 1. Gross violation of Articles 10(2)(a), B, and C, 27(4), 73(1)(a), 2 and B, 75(1)(c), 129(2) of the Constitution and Articles 147(1) as read together with Article 131(2)(c) and D of the Constitution. 2. gross violation of Articles 174(1) and 152(1) of the Constitution by undermining the President and the Cabinet and the effective discharge of the national government's executive mandate. 3. Gross violation of Article 6(2), 10(2)(a), 174, 1861, 189(1), and the fourth schedule to the Constitution by undermining devolution. 4. Gross violation of Article 161 of the Constitution on the institutional and decisional independence of judges. 5. Gross violation of Article 3(1) and 148(5)(a) of the Constitution on the fidelity to the oath of office and allegiance. 6. Serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes under Sections 13(1)(a) and 62 of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. 7. Serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed gross economic crimes under Sections 45(1), 46, 47(a)(3), and 48(1) of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and Sections 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. 8. Serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes by continuously misleading members of the public through false, malicious, divisive, and insightful remarks that are contrary to the provisions of Section 132 of the Penal Code and Section 29 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. 9. Gross misconduct that is incompatible with the high calling and dignified status of the office of the Deputy President, a member of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. His Excellency the Deputy President has publicly attacked and undermined the work of the National Intelligence Service and its officers. 10. Gross misconduct by openly and publicly insubordinating the President, who is the head of state and government. And 11. Gross misconduct by persistently bullying state and public officers. Honorable members, the motion is supported and the list is attached by 291 members of this House. Members, before I open the debate, I received a letter from one Honorable Wandeto purporting to withdraw his signature. I want to invite the Honorable Member to read the standing orders that are very clear. Once you append your signature to a special motion, once you append your signature on a special motion, you have crossed the Rubicon, and you cannot withdraw that signature. Honorable Otiende Amolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, shall I use the dispatch with your permission? Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this special motion is unprecedented but contemplated by the Constitution, and I support it. Let it be a lesson, Mr. Speaker, that be you ever so high, the Constitution is still above you. Mr. Speaker, some have told me and have told us that this is not our war. But, Mr. Speaker, they do not know that in circumstances of combat, a bystander is at greater risk than a combatant. You must choose your sides. And I've chosen, Mr. Speaker, after listening to the display of jingoism by the Deputy President, after listening to the self-entitlement for 2.5 hours, after listening to the disdain of governance institutions, this parliament and the courts, after listening to the DP threatening that parliament and the courts should know that it's not easy to remove a deputy president who had 7.2 million votes. Mr. Speaker, after treating Kenyans as fools by trying to mislead on the intent and purpose of his utterances on the idea of government being a company, it was easy for me to make a decision to cast my lot with impeachment of the deputy president. Mr. Speaker, there can be much to say on the reasons. It is easy, for example, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the confessions of the deputy president regarding 600 million that his son under 30 years was able to acquire. And he says, without tabling any evidence, that it was acquired from a bank. But he admits, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, two things. One, that the property in issue was government property irregularly acquired without the usual procurement processes. He also admits, Mr. Speaker, that the son was able to be given, a moratorium of 1 year not to pay anything while enjoying the proceeds. And the DP thinks there's nothing wrong with that. It is for good reason that the anti-corruption laws in this country do not limit themselves to the individual. They go to the spouse and the children. It is for such reasons. Mr. Speaker, it is also interesting that the DP admits to abuse of office. How does it do that? The DP admits to abuse of office on the issue of KEMSA. It is important, and this bears repetition, that the evidence tabled by the Honorable Mutuse includes an affidavit by Dr. Mulwa. That affidavit at paragraph 5 is very instructive, and it says that the DP's phone calls was aimed at interfering and covering procurement irregularities. And that is on a direct affidavit. But more importantly, if you look at page 69, you will see the SMSs. And that SMS, the son of the Deputy President, Dr. 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕, has the courage to say that there is a document for His Excellency we are trying to collect, not for himself, not for any other company, for His Excellency. And the fact, Mr. Speaker, that the DP admits to these processes and sees nothing wrong with it is a very serious matter of integrity. But, Mr. Speaker, I'll not speak to all those two. I'll speak to a more fundamental fact. The blatant justification of discrimination and insightful utterances against Kenyans. That is where I want to focus, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in this, the DP and have gone through the documents. There are various clips where the DP repeats this, that Kenya is a company and those who did not vote for Kenya Kwanza are not entitled to enjoy the proceeds from that company. What worries me, Mr. Speaker, is that with a straight face, the DP could appear on live television and justify these utterances. How does he justify it? He says that he is entitled to do that because there are some partisan political agreements or promises that were made. What does that mean? The DP elevates promises at a political party level above the National Cohesion and Integration Act, Section 13. He elevates those promises at a political party level above the Constitution of Kenya. There are 15 different articles that speaks against this. The fact that the DP can think that he can justify such utterances and elevate these agreements above the law and the Constitution is the clearest evidence that he must go because he has breached the Constitution. It is important to note that Article 145, 1A and C do not say that if you are respecting a political promise, then you can breach the Constitution. If that was to be the case, Article 24 would include that as a limitation. It does not include. If you want one reason, members, to impeach the Deputy President is because he has admitted to breaching the Constitution on account of a political promise. Mr. Speaker, Article 145(1)(b) is another interesting one, and it speaks to serious reasons to believe that the DP has breached the Constitution. You do not need the hard evidence. Members, remember, for conviction, that is for courts. We are not a court of law. Ours is to look at the evidence and see if there's a serious and reasons to believe. Those serious reasons speak to integrity. They speak to impropriety. And if you look at them and then find that there's some impropriety, then ground 7 will have been proved. Ground 7 talks of the issue of acquired property coming to 5.2 billion. What struck me, Mr. Speaker, is that the Deputy President took 1.5 hours to explain why he's not corrupt. Of the 2.5 hours, 90 minutes was to explain why he is not corrupt. The very fact that you take 90 minutes to explain you are not corrupt is prima facie evidence of corruption. Mr. Speaker, for one who is not corrupt, you can explain it in a sentence, period. To take 90 minutes is in itself prima facie evidence that there's corruption. Mr. Speaker, on the KEMSA issue, other than the affidavit and their interference, the affidavit, the DP then admits interference. Whoever advised the DP to do that live interview could not have had his interests at heart, but has made our work much easier. Because now there are self-incriminations, confessions, and admissions that we can work with. Mr. Speaker, it is clear from yesterday's presentation that the Deputy President can no longer deputize the President. The role of any deputy under the Constitution is to deputize. Mr. Speaker, I crave for just 2 more minutes. So that, Mr. Speaker, even the fact, Mr. Speaker, it is not a ground of the impeachment by Honorable Mwangi Mutuse. But it has become a clear ground from yesterday's interview that the DP is incapable of deputizing the President. And if we needed an independent ground, that is very clear. It is also clear that the DP can no longer be part, very clear. It is also clear that the DP can no longer be part of a cabinet. It is a basic rule in terms of labor law. If you cannot work with your boss, if you cannot insubordinate your boss, if one person is to go, is the subordinate, not the boss. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to just close by addressing one issue, and it bears address. Some Kenyans, hello, Mr. Speaker, it is important to address this issue. Some Kenyans want us to divert attention from the impeachment that is before us. There's only one impeachment motion before us, and it's in respect of the Deputy President. Now, some people have said, kufa makanga, kufa dereva. Now, let me explain to you. First of all, when you say kufa dereva, kufa makanga, you must remember that in that bus there are passengers. And those passengers can die if you are reckless. In this case, those passengers are Kenyans. We as Parliament must navigate that issue so carefully that the passengers called Kenyans remain safe. Mr. Speaker, that is extremely important. Why? We are in a very unique position where we have a president and a deputy president, but we do not have an IBC. If anything happens right now, as we are going to, if we impeach the deputy president as we want to, as we need to, the position can be filled even without an IBC. But if there is no president and there is no deputy president, only the speaker can act for 60 days. Within those 60 days, there must be an election. We cannot currently have an election because we have no IBC. To have IEBC commissioners, you need a president to nominate the board that will select them. Once the board is nominated and they propose a name, then the name must be forwarded again to us, and it's only the president who can nominate them. In other words, if you say kufa dereva kufa makanga, you want absolute turmoil for all the Kenyans to die in that accident. That would be a very reckless act. Mr. Speaker, I am convinced, having looked at the Deputy President, having listened to him, that the Deputy President is not remorseful. He is not sorry for any utterances. He is not prepared to change. He is a man who must be saved from himself by impeachment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
George, order. George Morugara. Wait for me. Order, honorable members, order. Order, Bensouda. Freeze. Freeze where you are.
Order, members.
Order, honorable members. I know the limits of exuberance are high. Order. Beatrice, freeze where you are. I know the levels of exuberance are high, but let's listen to those who are speaking. There's a lot of requests to speak, and I did tell you that in a motion such as this, Dr. Bukose will not ask to put the question. So let's listen to each other. Of course, the canned and band of debate cannot be ruled out in acknowledging good issues and disagreeing, but let's have some decorum. Those of you who speak, you have 5 minutes. If you can finish earlier, the better, so that many more can speak. Good. Go on, Murugara. And members, when you are given permission to speak, if you wish to come to the dispatch box, do so. If you want to speak from where you are, do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I even state my position as regards this motion, it is important for me to express what the views of Kenyans are regarding this motion, and especially with a hindsight of the public participation that we did, and also from the public opinion which was communicated to Kenyans through an agency that conducts opinion polls. It is vitally important to remind Kenyans that through the public participation that we did on Friday and Saturday, it was overwhelming that Kenyans were in approval of the motion, and therefore we must respect their position. We must also remind Kenyans that an agency by the name TIFA has come up with an opinion polling which again has indicated that Kenyans are in favor of the motion. Therefore, even as we debate today, even as we agonize over this motion, even as we consult the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, as we have done from time to time, as regards this motion, it is quite clear that Kenyans are in favor of the motion carrying the day. I therefore respect the position of Kenyans. I respect the position of my constituents of Tharaka, and I do confirm that I rise to support the motion. That today, the motion that has been brought to this House to have His Excellency the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, impeached, carries the day by a vote to be taken by the House. I must commend the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, who is actually my Vice Chairperson in Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, for work excellently done. and repeat the position he has made, that we are not a court of law trying a suspect. We are a House of Parliament which is required to just consider whether the grounds advanced are actually substantiated. Do we have reasons to believe that the grounds advanced are substantiated? Having listened to the mover, having looked at the documentation, and I confess we have burnt midnight oil looking at this particular motion and the supporting documentation, these grounds are substantiated. Allow me briefly to just mention but a few. Ground number one, which is on dangerous divisions in the country, is propagated by the Deputy President. The Deputy President last night admitted and tried to qualify the admission that he had likened Kenya to a company. There is total difference between likening the government to a company and stating categorically that the government is actually a company. The Deputy President, in the clips we have watched, was candid in a statement to Kenyans that the government is actually a company and that each one of us has or does not have shares in that company. The net effect of this is, if you do not have shares, then you do not belong to Kenya. If you have shares, then you are more Kenyan than any other person who has lesser shares than you. This is the dangerous division which this House must frown against, and it must hold squarely against the Deputy President. The second admission he made, which is a very strong ground of this motion, is breach of collective responsibility. It has been clearly stated that the cabinet includes the Deputy President. The President is the the Deputy President is the principal assistant of the President. Having breached this doctrine of collective responsibility, and he clearly said he did so because he thought, in his view, in his opinion, it was unconstitutional to have decided the way they decided, clearly shows that the Deputy President is not able to work with the government in which he is mandated to work with. To have actually failed to assist the President so that you speak contra to what the President says is itself subordination, as we have actually been told. The net effect is that even if the Deputy President was actually to survive this impeachment motion, our question is, where would he work? He cannot work with the President because he made another admission that this motion actually has the nod of the President. We have not had any PG, we have had no meetings whatsoever regarding this motion, but he is convinced that the President has a hand in this motion. If that is the case and he survives, who will he work with? Who will be his boss? Number two, he says whatever they do in the cabinet tinkers on it. And constitutionality. If that is what his position is, that the cabinet as it sits today would actually make decisions, which decisions they would have to execute at one time or the other, which are unconstitutional, which cabinet will he work with? Therefore, it goes without gainsaying that the personality of the Deputy President, His Excellency 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕𝒔, is untenable as far as the presidency is concerned and as far as the cabinet is concerned. 1 minute more. There has been an argument regarding the companies, and Honorable Mutuse has read out the companies, which nobody seems to know exactly why these companies were formed. Exactly what was the ulterior motive of forming these companies. But what I wish to point out regarding the companies, and what Kenyans should know, is that some of the properties under which the Deputy President aid, stating that these were properties of his late brother, are actually today his properties. Most important is a property known as 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒕 Home Resort. This property was actually sold to another company known as 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒕 Properties Limited for Kenya shillings 250,000. A search of these companies indicate that 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒕 Properties Limited is owned by 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕 Beach Resort Limited and John Y. Mathenge. We therefore have to ask ourselves, who is 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕 Beach Resort Limited? And CR12 indicates that this company is actually owned in shares by Keith Ekinorigathi, Kevin Gachagua-Rigathi, the estate of the deceased James Nderitu Gachagua. As we were told, these two persons named, Keith and Kevin, are not executors of the estate of the late Nderitu Gachagua. So if they actually own this company, which owns one of the properties of the deceased, purchased at Kenya shillings 250 million, then it goes without gainsaying that in fact the Deputy President has an explanation to give regarding this. Finally, we've been told about the press statement he made in Mombasa, and this is the evidence of insubordination. The country was on fire. The country was burning. The president actually finished or completed giving what measures he would take to restore the country. The Deputy President went to Mombasa, where he gave a statement which in itself was inciting to Kenyans, casting aspersions on the government, casting aspersions on our agencies, and at the end of the day, we have also seen him casting aspersions on the judiciary, which is supposed to be an independent institution. What we are required to do as members of parliament is to prove only one ground. The rest of them may fall or may succeed. But I can assure you, out of the 11 grounds, there is cogent evidence that the Deputy President has committed acts inconsistent with his office, acts which in themselves warrant this House to impeach him today as we go to the vote. As I conclude, I urge the House, let us look at the bigger picture, which is the bigger picture of Kenya as a country. What we are doing is not to try and appease one person. We are trying to do this so that the country is saved. And we have always asked the question, the second in command who does not work with the first in command and his team, of what use would that person be to the country? With those very many remarks, I do beg to support this motion. Thank you.
Mishimbogo. Give her the mic.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nasimama hapa kuunga mkono hoja hii ya kumng'atua mamlakani naibu wa rais Bwana Rigathi Gachagua. Na naunga mkono kwa sababu katiba yetu kifungu 159 imetupatia sababu mwafaka za kuweza kumng'atua naibu wa rais. Na sababu ya kwanza imezungumzia kukeuka katiba. Na nikiangalia Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua amekeuka katiba, haswa nikiangalia kipengele cha 10 ambacho kinazungumzia maadili ya kitaifa. Maadili ya kitaifa ikiwemo umoja, ikiwemo demokrasia, ikiwemo usawa. Mara nyingi sana amezungumzia mambo ya kwamba nchi yetu ni kama kampuni na ni ya washikadau. Na amesema ya kwamba washikadau hawa ni wale ambao tu wamepiga kura katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Hivyo basi kukiuka maadili katika kifungu cha 10, kwa sababu tunajua Wakenya wote wanalipa ushuru na Wakenya wote wana haki sawia, wale waliopiga kura kwa serikali na wale ambao pia walikuwa katika upande ule mwingine, kwa sababu ni demokrasia. Unaweza kuwa upande wa serikali na unaweza kuwa upande wa upinzani. Vile vile pia tunaona katika kifungu 147 kinasema ya kwamba yeye atakuwa ni msaidizi mkuu wa rais katika serikali, na msaidizi mkuu pia atakuwa ni naibu katika zile kazi ambazo rais anazifanya. Lakini je, vitendo vyake vimeonyesha mambo hayo? Vitendo vimeonyesha ya kwamba yeye si msaidizi. Kuna wakati ule wa Gen Z, wakati rais ametoa hotuba hapa Nairobi ya kutoa mwelekeo wa kitaifa na jambo lile, yeye alikuwa Mombasa akitoa hotuba ambayo ilikuwa inazungumza tofauti na ile hotuba ya rais. Na hapo pia akatia fitina katika taasisi zetu za kiserikali na kumlaumu Bwana Nurdin Haji. Kwa hivyo imeonyesha ya kwamba yeye ni kama anachukua nafasi ile ya rais, hachukui ile nafasi ya kwamba yeye ni msaidizi. Vile vile pia tumeona nini, Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, huna heshima kwa kina mama wa taifa hili la Kenya. Vile vile katika huo utovu wa nidhamu, tunaona sehemu ya Nyandarua alinunua shamba ambalo kina mama walikuwa wamelima mahindi, wamelima viazi, wamelima zile mushiri. Alimweka pale MCA na wakavuruga hiyo chakula yote. Angekuwa yeye ana hekima kama kiongozi, angeacha vikue, watu wavune, alafu achukue hilo shamba. Lakini ni kwamba hana nidhamu na wala hana kufikiria wa Kenya kama naibu wa rais, na wala hana ubinadamu. Vile vile pia sababu nyingine inakuwa ya kwamba ukikosa ufanisi, Kiingereza incompetence. Na mimi nataka niseme alikosa ufanisi kwa sababu alisema anapigana na pombe haramu na anapigana na madawa ya kulevya. Akaja kule pwani, kazi aliyofanya kubwa ni kutukana viongozi, kusema anajua wanauza miadarati, atawataja, atawashika. Aliwashika. Miadarati iko ama hakuna? Na hii pombe haramu iko mlima peke yake ama pia iko kule magharibi, iko kule sehemu ya Nyanza, na iko hata hapa Nairobi. Tumuulize yeye mamilioni ambayo ameyatumia kwa hiyo kazi yametupatia natija gani? Yamefanya faida gani? Isipokuwa kunyakua ardhi, akiandika kwa jina la mke wake ati atatengeza sehemu za kuweza kunasua vijana kwa jambo hilo. Jambo jingine ni kashfa ya KEMSA. Imezungumziwa vizuri sana vile alivyowezesha watoto wake na makampuni yake na kuiba pesa zile katika kashfa hiyo. Hatuwezi kuwa na naibu wa rais ambaye juzi na jana alikuwa milioni 800, yani kama mali yake. Hivi karibuni ati ni bilioni 5.2. Kwa muda mchache tu pesa hizo umezipata wapi? Ni bilioni 5.2. Kwa muda mchache tu pesa hizo umezipata wapi? Pia umedhulumu bibi wawili wa marehemu ndugu yako aliyekuwa gavana wa Nyeri. Utakuwaje upewe flati 10 na wao wapewe 5 na ni wawili na kuna na watoto? Jamani, ni sheria gani? Tunao sheria ile ya Kiingereza.
Give her 1 minute.
Tunajua hiyo sheria imezungumzia wakati mume amekufa, yani ni mabibi na watoto ndio wanaorithi. Sasa wewe itakuwaje uchukue huo urithi wote, mpaka hoteli umechukua, ati uliandikiwa, ati ndugu yako alikupa? Jamani, wewe kama makamu wa rais muogope Mwenyezi Mungu, na ujue ya kwamba hatuko hapa sisi katika ukabila. Tukiangalia akti ile ya National Cohesion Integration Act inazungumzia yoyote atakayetumia maneno ya matusi, maneno ya kutishia ili kuweza kuleta bughudha katika makabila, yeye anatakikana ashtakiwe na amefanya makosa. Rwanda juzi na jana matamshi ya kikabila yaliwatia katika vita vikali vya kikabila, na wewe leo unataka kuleta vita katika taifa la Kenya. Tuliona molo clashes, na hata wewe unasemekana ulikuwa kwa hiyo maneno. Tuliona
Time up, Mishi. Faith Gitau.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for according me this opportunity. And from the onset, I support this special motion. First, our supreme law of the land expects the presidency, which includes the president and the deputy, to be a symbol of national unity. In that case, the holders of that office are expected to portray a national image as opposed to an ethnic outlook. Honorable Speaker, our Deputy President has been at the forefront in advancing a selfish ethnic agenda. For him, it is about his community and nothing more. After an election, Mr. Speaker, the government has to serve both those who voted for it and those who did not. It was wrong for the Deputy President to advocate for shareholding in order to discriminate against the rest of the communities, which may create ethnic animosity against Mount Kenya region. As a county member of parliament, I think I have traversed this nation more than the Deputy President. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President, as the second in command, should act as a father figure to members of parliament and the community at large. Far from it, the Deputy President, during his tenure, has been divisive and very egocentric. For him, it is about me, myself, and I. It is unfortunate that he has lowered the status and respect expected of such high office. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, when we went to the people urging them to elect this government, we gave them an undertaking that women must be respected. It is therefore, it disturbs me so greatly when the Deputy President is at the forefront demeaning women in leadership, particularly those he perceives his enemies. He has no respect for women whatsoever. He has made a scathing public attacks on a woman High Court judge. And in addition, he has been attacking women, and especially members of parliament, me and others included in this house. And therefore, he can never, and he has no respect for women, and he can never work with women. And for those few remarks, I support.
Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to say the following. Impeachment of a deputy president is a matter of national interest and international interest, and it's on the basis of that, Honorable Speaker, that people have to be very careful with what they do with this impeachment. Honorable Speaker, I want to remind the House that we are only one of the many parts of the process. This National Assembly will be making their decision. From there, we'll go to the Senate. And there is also the courts, if need be. And it's on the basis of that, Honorable Speaker, that we must isolate personal issues from issues which make sense to Kenyans. So that, Honorable Speaker, we don't, as a House, go for what I'll call mob justice mentality, and at the end of the day, the other stages, we lose it. Honorable Speaker, in the past, this House has been thrown under the bus because of this kind of mentality, where we go, make decisions, and out there, when they go to the courts, a number of our acts of parliament have been declared unconstitutional, basically because as members, we come here and we start shouting and assuming that other people there are not watching. Honorable Speaker, what am I saying? I've listened to the grounds of this motion, this impeachment motion, and I've listened to my friend, Honorable 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕, making the presentation and trying to justify some of these grounds, Honorable Speaker. I want to pick a few of them and ask myself whether really they meet the expectations in terms of saying that the DP should be impeached on those grounds. The first one, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of demolitions. In this country, Honorable Speaker, when you go to our constitution, it clearly says that Kenyans have a right, they have their own rights, made a decision to carry out governance. The topmost person in terms of hierarchy is the president, is not the deputy president. So in a situation where a decision is made, and the deputy president says he doesn't support it, the question is, should you be harassing the deputy president or the president? Because the person who took the oath as the head of the executive is the president or the deputy president. So on the basis of those demolitions, Honorable Speaker, it is going to be very unfair to start saying it is the deputy president who is in supporting the president, because at the end of the day, whose decision did carry the day? That's the question. The second issue, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of shareholding. Honorable members, let's be very honest with ourselves. We are all politicians. We have been voted in. We represent constituencies. How many of you can say that you are not practicing what is being explained in this motion? How many? Let's be very honest with ourselves. Let's be very honest with ourselves that most of you, majority of you, are doing exactly what is being said in this motion. It is only that don't say it publicly. That's the truth of the matter, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Yes, 𝒓𝒊𝒈𝒉𝒕, there's a point of order.
Yeah, I have no problem, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah.
I hope I'll be saving my time.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, my name is Steve Mogaka from West Mogrango. Is the member on the floor in order to speak about what I practice? What does he know about what I practice? Can he restrict himself to what he does and not start throwing aspersions on members of parliament as if he is in their minds and he is in their practices? He is not. Is he not out of order?
Yes, Makali.
Honorable Speaker, I really don't see any point of order there. I ignore and proceed. Honorable Speaker, the issue of the judicial officer who is being accused as one of the grounds for this. Honorable Speaker.
Order, Makali.
And Honorable Speaker.
There's another point of order here.
Point of order.
Take your seat. Yeah. Give Farah the mic.
Mr. Speaker, is the Honorable Makali, somebody I have a lot of respect for. In order to compare a member of parliament who represents a constituency and the functions of that member and somebody who is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya who represents the four corners of this country, and say that because the members of parliament go and develop, my presumption is that he thinks the CDF funds for one constituency cannot be taken to another constituency. But that's a different thing when it comes to national resources and the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya.
Makali, wind up, your time is up.
You know, Honorable Speaker, I have this honor just to drive me to not to say what I wanted to say, Honorable Speaker. I can see a very deliberate move to curtail me from saying what I want to say.
Do you want
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, you know the thing is, Honorable Speaker, and Honorable Speaker, you need to protect me on a serious. You have been protecting everybody who has spoken. Unless also, Honorable Speaker, you're on the same side of those who are supporting. Because on a serious, Honorable Speaker, I don't think it's fair. You have been protecting everybody else. You can't protect.
Order, Honorable Makali Mulu. Order, Honorable Makali Mulu. You've been sitting here since we started. Order, Makali. Not a single previous speaker attracted a single point of order. If any came, the speaker will allow it. Not a single person raised a point of order. In fact, I'm being gracious by asking you, Nimrod Mbai wants to inform you, do you want this information? If you don't want it, you go on. But for you, order, Makali Mulu. You know, when you lose your cool, you also lose the argument. So just be composed, say your bit. The speaker has no dog in this fight. Just say what you want to say, finish, and we give space to somebody else. And any member who wants to stand on a point of order, it's within your standing orders. He has said he doesn't want your information. Go on.
You know, Honorable Speaker, with all due respect, people have been making their contribution here since morning. Nobody has been shouting point of order. So, and it's my democratic position to oppose the motion.
Order.
Honorable Speaker.
Go on.
Honorable Speaker, I've been elected by the people of Kitui Central to come to this house 3 times. And nobody can assume that I cannot make my contribution. Honorable Speaker, I've been saying, on the matter of judicial officer.
Wind up.
The judicial officer has been accused of corruption-related matters, Honorable Speaker. And there is a court case, or as we are speaking. Are we running away from accountability as a country? When do we allow the courts to do their work up to the conclusion that as a house we want to make this as a ground for impeachment, Honorable Speaker? This is what we are saying. There is separation of power, Honorable Speaker, and we should respect that. Third thing, Honorable Speaker, the India of officers has been called by the DP. Just called. How many of us here since morning have been called by the President? How many of us here since morning have been called by the Deputy President, pleading with us to either support or oppose? Can you be impeached on that note? On a serious note, we need to be serious as a house. And that's why I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, from where we are seated as a house, you go for mob justice mentality, you lose it at the top there, you are trying to reduce the credibility of this house to the lowest level. I know we are already low. I wish we should not reduce it further than where we are, Honorable Speaker. Let's go for strong grounds for opposition of this motion. Is it a situation where a thief has been sent to court to catch another thief? This is a situation. Honorable Speaker, this country has much more serious issues than what we are discussing.
Your time is up. Order. I will now order. Take your seat. Order. Robert Mbui. Order, Robert Mbui. Give him 1 minute to finish.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker. So I was saying, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans have said that Kitui Central in particular said, kufa makanga, kufa ndereva, kufa mechanic. Because Kenyans are more serious issues. And when they die, we want a new renewal of this country, Honorable Speaker. This idea of mob justice, we are not going to allow it in this country. Kenyans have more serious things. I oppose, Honorable Speaker.
Millie Odhiambo to speak to the public participation report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I was just wondering if after speaking to the public participation that I could also just make my contribution.
You have 15 minutes within which you have to speak to all those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll try. Mr. Speaker, earlier on in the morning, I had tabled before the House. I am, is it vertically challenged?
You are loud enough. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was indicating that earlier in the morning I had presented a report of a public participation on the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this is following the notice of a special motion by Honorable Mwengi Mutuse and in line with Article 1182 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, consequently, the House Business Committee approved a public participation program across all 290 constituencies, and I present on behalf of the House Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, I'll speak to the issue of the legal framework of public participation. And Mr. Speaker, Article 10(2) of the Constitution provides for the participation of the people as one of the national values and principles of governance. Mr. Speaker, Article 118 of the Constitution requires Parliament to ensure public access and participation of the people in its affairs. I will not go to the details, and you can read it for ourselves because of time. Mr. Speaker, I wish to note on my own behalf that in quasi-judicial proceedings like this, public participation is not really necessary, even though the courts are pronounced that they are. In my view, they are not actually necessary in quasi-judicial processes like this, because necessary in a quasi like this. By the need to preserve the overarching constitutional principle of acting without unreasonable delay. The special motion for removal from office by impeachment of the Deputy President was therefore processed in accordance with the timeline sets out under Standing Order 64. Mr. Speaker, in buttressing the necessity for expedited consideration of special motions, previous speakers of the National Assembly of Kenya expressed themselves on the question of timelines for considering special motions by the House when the special motions were filed proposing the removal by impeachment of the then Cabinet Secretaries, Honorable Anne Waiguru, Honorable James Macharia, Honorable Kaimenyi, and more recently, Honorable Mithika Linturi. In all the foregoing instances, the Speaker emphasized the need to dispose of a special motion as soon as is practicable to remove the anxiety of hangman's noose from the neck of a state officer proposed for impeachment. Mr. Speaker, you have seen the level of anxiety that the Deputy President has undergone, and indeed when he was actually giving the press statement yesterday, he was almost in tears. And that is why the House hastens the process so that the emotional turmoil is lessened having gone through this process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Clerk of the National Assembly published advertisements on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of October and invited written submissions via hand delivery, post, or email until the 5th of October 2024. Mr. Speaker, all these were also advertised on the 4th of October and extended to the 5th in each constituency. To assist in this exercise, a public view template was made available to the public in both English and Kiswahili to guide submissions. On the 3rd and 4th of October 2024, 40,000 copies of the public view templates were also circulated as newspaper pullouts. This template was designated to provide clarity and precision in responses, whether for or against a motion. Number 2, to supplement other means of public input. And 3, to ensure both qualitative and quantitative feedback was captured, which is actually as has been directed by the courts in the past. Mr. Speaker, I just want to indicate that many means were used, including radio, TVs, and other means to publicize this process, including Twitter, or formerly, currently X, or formerly Twitter, and Facebook pages. Mr. Speaker, the public was invited to submit views either in support or in opposition of the special motion, or offer other views. Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud Kenyans for their growing consciousness on their civic rights and duties. Mr. Speaker, people participated in various ways, as was witnessed both on electronic and social media, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, many Kenyans who are participated very expressively. Mr. Speaker, I think many of us saw people expressing their views in many ways, some of which I will explain later. However, Mr. Speaker, by the nature of newsmaking, we saw the areas where the views were expressive, but much less in the areas where the views were not that expressive. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the report, and I want to download the parliamentary team, they have even captured photos of members of the public giving their views in constituencies very peacefully. But Mr. Speaker, as I want to repeat, that by the very nature of newsmaking, what we will see are the dramatic scenes. And those we saw, I don't think it is shame as such, it's their right and they can share. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate I wish to report that based on all that, over 200,000 responses were received, of which 65.1% supported the motion, while 33.81% opposed the motion, and 1.09% offered neutral or other alternative views. Mr. Speaker, some of the members in contributing have actually alluded to some of those alternative views. I've heard the Speaker right before me talking about the issue that Kenya has very many pressing issues. Mr. Speaker, indeed it is true, Kenya has many pressing issues, and as a House, we are already seized of those issues and are indeed already dealing with some of those issues. One of those issues that the Parliament has raised is the issue of education, the education system, and we have called the CS for education more than 2 times. CS for education more than 2 times to deal with that issue. Again, on the health issue, we have also invited the CS for health amongst other officials. So indeed the House can chew and walk at the same time. Mr. Speaker, when a motion is brought of this magnitude, Parliament, by its own standing orders, must stop everything else and give priority to this motion. And that is why Parliament stopped all members of Parliament and focused on this with this issue. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate that given that this is a very special public participation process, a first of its kind, Mr. Speaker, since the Constitution was promulgated, there were some challenges, but which did not affect the overall product of public participation. Mr. Speaker, some of those challenges were as follows. Mr. Speaker, there was political interference at public forums such as Bomas of Kenya and Murang'a. Mr. Speaker, there was violent disruptions in areas like Olkalau, Kipipiri, and Nyeri Town. Mr. Speaker, there was incomplete or unclear submission, including forms without identifying information or contradictory responses. Mr. Speaker, there was low turnout in some constituencies due to insecurity, such as in Bura. Mr. Speaker, public expectation for monetary compensation for participation was also experienced. Mr. Speaker, there was late submission of forms and memorandum in some instances. There were threats of violence towards officers and inappropriate language in some email submissions. And Mr. Speaker, there was pressure from some constituencies such as Olkalau and Kipipiri for officers to declare results prematurely. On the whole, Mr. Speaker, most places in the country went on uninterrupted. And the results that I just indicated to you, Mr. Speaker, are based on that. Mr. Speaker, because of time and I would like other members to speak, I would want to invite members to look at the report that has been tabled by the House Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, I'll just speak very briefly on my own account. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate on my own account as a member of Suba North constituency that what we are going through post-2010 constitution, I want to agree with the